Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today I'm going to be using, well, a lot of these products I'm showing you I didn't end up using. I did use the Maple Leaf Lovely Layers and I did use the Autumn Splendor cover plate, as well as the Sentiment set, which is Heartfelt Hello. So here I have just some white glossy cardstock as well as some gold metallic cardstock. We're going to be doing a stained glass technique. So I have my alcohol inks and I have a little pipette. I could not do this technique with Yupo. I have to use the glossy cardstock. It's not going to move the same. Like the alcohol inks will not move the same, but that's okay because we don't need it to. So I'm just going to put down a good amount of just regular alcohol. I'm not using my regular mixative, though you totally can. But because I already knew that they weren't going to move the same, I was like, this stuff's expensive. I'm not wasting it. I'm just going to use regular isopropyl alcohol. And then I'm just going to start dropping in some like autumn colors onto my background. I'm doing 2 of these because we're making 2 cards today. So I just picked some like oranges, reds, a golden yellow, yellowish green. And then I personally love a bit of like magenta in my fall cards. But you can totally do whatever color works best, whatever color palette you're happy with. Because at the end of the day, this technique is super cool and really forgiving. So anyway, I learned pretty quickly that I needed to take my colors all the way out to the edge. But by that time, my alcohol, like that I had originally put down, was kind of already dissipating, because alcohol evaporates fairly quickly. And so I did have to go in and just make it move a bit more with some more alcohol. And then I'm going to go around the edges. This will require me to then add more pigment to get those super saturated colors that I personally like. But there's not going to be a lot of, what's the term? I guess for lack of a better term, like blooming that you would normally get with alcohol inks on on Yupo paper, which is plastic. But Yupo paper will not work for this technique. It just won't. So once I got more alcohol on there, then I'm just going to add some more color and I'm just going to play around with it until I'm happy. There isn't a right or wrong way to do this. You're not going to see the background in its entirety because we're going to be die cutting it. Yeah, we're going to be die cutting both of them. So don't stress too much about whether or not you 100% love the background. You're not going to see it as one completed piece. You're going to see it as a stained glass piece. So since I learned my lesson the first time around, that knowing I needed the alcohol to go all the way to the edges, I did that to begin with on my second piece. And now I will go in and the same thing, drop the same amount of colors. You can see exactly what I'm talking about, how they're not moving a ton while we're, adding the ink. Normally, when you put alcohol down on Yupo paper, that it starts running, it starts spreading right away. There's very minimal spreading going on over here. One of the things with this particular cardstock piece that I did... I got a little heavy-handed with the inks. Truly, I did. But there is a way to fix it, so don't stress about it. I just went in, you'll see when we get there, when it starts, really moving around, and I start to get a little less happy with the way that it looks. You'll see that we actually can just go in with a damp baby wipe, or even a paper towel, and you can just blot up the colors that you don't love. Like for me, mine got kind of very dark in the center because of the green mixing with the red. And it does stain the paper. You can see that in the background. It does stain the paper quite a bit. But it was pooling in the center. It was super dark. I didn't love it. So here we are. I'm just going to go in and kind of blot that up because it is still wet. It's going to smooth back out on its own. It's not going to require really any work from me to move those colors around. But again, I cannot stress enough that you do not have to love the pieces in their entirety because you will not be using them in their entirety. So don't think it has to be perfection. It doesn't, because it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. And I promise you, these are going to be stunning when you're done. So yeah, once I'm happy with how this is looking, I'm going to let them dry. I went to go, you'll see here, I went to go put on the Autumn Splendor cover plate. And when I picked it up, I realized my paper was still cold. So it was dry to the touch, but it was still cool. And that meant that the inside fibers of the paper were still wet. So I'm just going to hit them with my heat tool. This is why we can't use the Yupo paper, because we're going to be using our heat tool to do the technique, and Yupo is not great at being heated or being embossed. It kind of shrinks up on itself, and we don't want that. So that's why the glossy cardstock works really well for this. I did not try with photo paper, but if you have it and you don't mind sacrificing a piece, give it a try with that as well. So I'm just going to tape my Autumn Splendor cover plate in place so that it doesn't move, and then I will run that through the die cutting machine. The other piece I will be cutting 2 of these maple leaves out of. So I'm using the largest, not the detail portion, the large full leaf, and I will cut 2 of these out of this background. And even then I'll have some left over. So if you have other, smaller leaf dies or something that you wanted to cut it out of, you absolutely could. So here's where we're at. Now let's get into the technique. You're going to need, it's an old school thing. So if you've been a crafter for a long time, you probably have it. If you haven't, you might need to get it. UT, which is ultra thick embossing enamel. They still sell this. Ranger still sells this. The bottle looks completely different now. Mine looks the way it does because it's old. Okay, I bought this back when I first started card making back in like 2010. So it lasts forever. Obviously, here we are over 13 years later, and it still works great. But I'm going to cover this whole panel. I chose to use my pouncer. If you don't have a pouncer, you could use your Versamark ink pad. But I'm going to cover this whole panel in embossing ink. I found that the pouncer was the easiest way to do it. I will tell you that it did stain my pouncer a little bit. I did pick up a little bit of color from the pouncing, but that's okay. Once the whole thing is covered, I am going to pour on this UT. What is the difference between UT and regular embossing powder? It looks like salt, or sugar. It's super thick. And the intention is for it to be super thick because you can use it for different things besides just embossing. When I sat down to do the stained glass look, I was like, do I need to do this with an epoxy? How can I do this? And that's what led me to the UT, because it's just it works just like embossing powder, but it's so thick that it coats the entire paper. It looks like a liquid sitting on top of it, or like a glass. And it just looks so amazing. You can see it if you have multiple layers, you can see it kind of rippling where the liquid is moving. I only did 1 layer for each one of these, but if you have an area that is not completely smooth and it's a little bit pitted, you can absolutely go back in and do a second layer. There's no reason why you can't do that. If you catch it while your embossing powder is still hot, you actually don't even need to add any more Versamark. But you can see now this whole piece is super glossy, and we're going to do the same thing with these leaves. And so I'm just going to go right over top of them. I think they look super cool even without the embossing. If you just cut the second detail piece and put it over top of it, I think it would look awesome. But I really wanted that glass effect, and so that's where the ultra thick embossing enamel kind of comes in. So these are the same thing. I'm just going to cover them. I do wish that I had given myself a handle. I don't know that I heat embossed them the safest way possible. I do wish I had given myself a little bit more of a handle than just the the little leaf stem. But I didn't, and so maybe do better than me. Maybe use your tweezers or something. But this worked just as well as it did on the cover plate on these smaller pieces. It worked really, really super fantastic. So I did experiment with this a little bit. I have another video that will be coming up a little bit closer, maybe next week. But I have another way to do something very similar and get a different look. But I love the way that these came out. I think that they are wicked cool. I did find that I liked the cover plate, but the dies that have the detail layer on top of them, like the maple leaf does, I really loved the way that those looked because it genuinely looked like stained glass with the metallic separating each one of the pieces parts. But so if you have dies like that, I would recommend trying it with any of those. Anything that has like an open, like a full area and then a frame. So here I looked at doing the gold in the background with just the cover plate on top. And I did like that, but I wanted it to look as if it was one solid piece, like a stained glass window would. So what I opted to do, Lord help us all, was do an inlay. And so I'm going to adhere this down to just a white piece of cardstock. That's going to be my backer. I just used regular glue, the honeybee glue. I did find that if I put something a little weighted on it, I had a much better result with it adhering. But then for the gold piece, because I don't want to have to pick out all of these pieces and inlay them and worry about adhesive, I am going to use the trick that we did, last week, where we actually attach an adhesive sheet to the back of the gold paper. The last time I did it, I believe that I used Craft Perfects. This time I tried Crafter's Companion. This one is really, really sticky. It worked really well, but I had a hard time getting my paper lined up because if I just barely touched it to the adhesive, it stuck. Like it meant business. So then once I can get it on there, I just smooth it out as I remove the backing paper, and then I'm just going to cut off any excess. And now I'm going to cut out that same cover plate out of the gold, but this time all of my pieces will have adhesive on the back of them already. So I knew that I was kind of setting myself up for a kind of a mundane task, the inlaying. Now, some people, I was actually laughing with one of my girlfriends. I was like, this is a total Laura Basson situation because she loves stuff like this. But I don't necessarily. But I do think that at the end of the day, it was still worth it. And then I didn't put adhesive on the back of this gold sheet for the detail layer for the maple leaves. It just wasn't necessary. So I cut two of them, both of them out of gold. You could use any metallic. Well, you could use anything, but I wanted the metallic because, again, I was very specifically going for the stained glass look. So here is the die cut. It did cut out really nicely, but because it is a little bit thicker, some of it sat into the die a little bit more. I will tell you that as I went on, I found a little bit of a trick that worked a little better for me. So I did use the honeybee has a pokey tool, and I used that. So I would poke it out, remove the backing paper, and then fit it in. I quickly figured out that if I held the piece still inside the full die cut, not the die portion, if I held it with my finger, I could slide my pokey tool in between the backer sheet and the piece, and that helped it to go much faster. So I did leave that, once I figured that part out, I did leave that part in so you could see what I was talking about. But basically, I just went through, and honestly, I'm a person who likes to get the hard stuff over first. So I went around the edges and did all the smaller bits for the most part, and then I would work on the bigger pieces in the middle where it was a little bit more palatable for me to do it. Again, would I make this card again? I think it was I do think I would make it again because I think it looks wicked cool, and I truly think it does look like stained glass. And you know how it is when you're crafting and something comes together exactly the way you see it in your head. It's super exciting. So here is where I'm doing that, where I'm holding it with my thumb and then sliding off the release paper, and then I'm able to pick it up with the tool. This made it go much, much faster. So if you choose to try something like this, maybe maybe try that technique, and not having to kind of like poke out all the pieces. And then, you know, you're holding this little teeny tiny die and you're peeling the backing sheet off. This went much, much faster, and it left a lot of the backing sheet in, like you'll see, it left a lot of it inside. And then now, like, I didn't use it in this video, but I have this beautiful metallic cutout of the Autumn Splendor sheet that I will be able to use on another card that already has adhesive on it. So I will be using that. I did play around with it a little bit, and I think I found another kind of fun technique to do with that. But so this is the whole background for this card, and I think it's beautiful. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to pop out my little gold pieces from my leaves, and then I am going to just adhere this again just with liquid glue and put some weight on top of it. So these are one of those things where, like, experimenting when you have an idea can really be very rewarding. I had no idea that these were going to come out as cool as they did. And I did have to try a couple of other things beforehand. I tried like filling it with glossy accents to create the glass look. And that did work. So if you don't have the embossing powder and you want to try to do the glossy accents, it did work. It took forever to dry. I'm not going to pretend like it didn't. It took a really, really long time. A really, really long time to dry. But again, it didn't use a ton of product, honestly. I didn't try it with a cover plate. I tried it with another frame die. And it did, like I said, it did work. So that's maybe another option if you don't have the embossing powder that we used here. The other thing that you can try is, instead of doing the ultra thick, it's just doing layers and layers of clear embossing powder. You can maybe build it up and not have to buy the ultra thick. Just some options. So yeah, it's been super crazy around here lately. Like so many behind the scene things. Look at these. I can't even stop looking at them. Look at them. Look at those leaves. Like, they're so pretty. Oh, I just love them. They came out so much better than I thought. I'm proud of me for sticking with it and experimenting. And you should experiment too. Dude, seriously, they just came out so good. Anyway, so here, I didn't know whether or not I wanted my sentiment on white. You guys know how I feel about gold on white, and that's a struggle for me. So I thought I would try it on some craft cardstock as well. And then I'm stamping in our Be Creative gold pigment ink, and then I will heat emboss them in gold. Turns out I did like the white better. So I did have to come back. This sentiment is, I don't even know who I'll send this card to. But it's one of my favorites. It says my favorite color is autumn. And I just think it's so pretty. I don't know, just maybe for a hi card, just a hey, how you doing kind of card. Same thing with the other one, fall breeze and autumn leaves. They're very non-specific. And these cards are very, gender neutral. You could send them for anything. But yeah, I use the Heartfelt Hello sentiment set so much. Like, there's just such really good ones in there, and the font is stunning. I mean, stop it. So it's been very busy behind the scenes here in my regular life. I know that we haven't had a lot of story time recently because we have been trying so many different techniques. And I am trying to get it back in where I can. Here for the leaves, I cut out another one of the Autumn Splendor to just in white, just a white on white background, just to add a little bit of texture. That one's hands down my favorite, which is funny because I love color, so you think the other one would be, but I cannot get over those leaves and how much I love them. I'm going to start talking about the leaves now. But then for the frame for this one over here, I actually use the fall layering frames, and there is an A2 size frame in there that just gives a lovely little detail. And then I just trimmed it out so that you still have this really pretty white frame and the detail. I don't 100% love the white on the cover plate card for the sentiment, but I didn't love the craft either, and honestly, I didn't have a better idea. So I just embraced the white. And that's okay. For the other one, I left it white on white, but I did go in and add some gold Perfect Pearl splatters just to kind of set off the background. And of course, add some more, as if these weren't shiny enough. I need more shimmer and glitter just because it makes my heart happy. So, yeah, so I just, it's just been a lot. And you guys know, like I was working very far in advance. So I actually made these cards. I know you're seeing them on Saturday, but I actually made these cards the previous Monday because I had planned on being out of town this weekend, and it just didn't end up working out. But now I'm like so far like I'm so far ahead in my card making, which has never happened. In fact, I was supposed to leave on Thursday. So on Wednesday before I left, I made 5 cards in one day. I think that's a record for me. But just like trying to, get these things out so that way I would have, all the things lined up for when I was out of town. But now the benefit to you guys is it means that you're going to have a lot of videos. You're just going to have so many videos. You're going to be so sick of me. Well, I hope that's not true. I hope you don't get too tired of me. But there are going to be a lot of videos up and coming. So I hope that you will, check back and check those out, as they are all, they're all pretty different. We're obviously we're in the thick of fall. It's 50 degrees here and rainy today. So Ohio... Oh, I think our Indian summer is over, and we're heading into fall, which means my mud monsters are going to be back with the dogs and all that jazz. But we're also getting closer to our little Jelly Bean's birthday. She's going to be 2, so that's exciting. We're doing a Mickey Mouse. She likes Mickey Mouse themed party. And so we're gearing up for that next month, which I think will be super fun. The irony is Peanut's second birthday was also Mickey Mouse themed because he loved them too. So that's kind of funny that how they're both, at that same age, we're into the same things. So here, what I've done is I want you guys to know how I feel about the honeybee gem stickers. There's no comparison. So I did add some kind of gold champagne colored ones. And originally that is what I used on both cards. These are from the Simply Spring gem stickers, but they got really lost on that cover plate background. And I didn't love them over there. I loved them on the white background, and so I kept them on the white background. But you couldn't really see, I mean, you can see what I'm talking about right here. They're barely visible. So what I did end up doing is I used, like I said, like the gold champagne color on the white background. But I went back through, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. Is it Make It Merry? The Make It Merry. I'll link it below. Everything will be linked below. You know how we roll around here in the description. I have them sitting right here still because I don't clean my desk. It is Make It Merry. Look at my memory. So I ended up using the white gemstones from that, and I did like it much better. But those are both cards. So I hope that you give this a try. I think it's a really fun technique with amazing results. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and then I will catch you on the next video.